Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast, special edition 2020 NFL Draft Recap and Grades Edition. At the end of the show, I'm also going to give out my picks for best pick by every team, which doesn't necessarily mean best rookies. It's my best pick in terms of a value standpoint by every team. So let's get right into it. We'll go in alphabetical order. The Arizona Cardinals. I give them a solid B. I think they did a nice job here. They addressed a couple of their needs. I think they could have gotten a defensive back at some point, an interior lineman, and maybe even another edge rusher. But I give them a B because they got a couple steals in this class. With their picks, in the first round, they took Isaiah Simmons, the talented linebacker from Clemson. Third round, they stole Josh Jones, the offensive tackle from Houston. Fourth round, they got Lakai Fotu, the defensive tackle from Utah, and Rashad Lawrence, the defensive tackle from LSU. Sixth round, Evan Weaver, linebacker out of Cal. In the seventh round, they took Eno Benjamin, the running back out of Arizona State. Simmons will start for them, for sure. Josh Jones maybe could start for them if there are a couple injuries, because I know DJ Humphries was somebody that they drafted not long ago, and then Marcus Gilbert is a good lineman, but he's somebody that's in decline, so maybe Josh Jones gets a chance to start if one of those guys are injured or something. And the other thing is if maybe they trade one of those guys. Maybe they trade DJ Humphries. Maybe they trade Marcus Gilbert and give Josh Jones a chance to start. Because this better not turn out to be the situation like the Browns had with Austin Corbett, who they had on the bench. And they had the two other guys starting over him. Kevin Zeitler's good. And then they trade Zeitler to open up the spot for Corbett. And then Corbett they didn't love, and then they wound up trading him away to the Rams. So they better take advantage of a good lineman prospect falling to them. I think that Eno Benjamin could be a solid backup to Kenyon Drake. So I think could be a surprise contributor to this team. I think Fotu has a shot to make the team. And so does Rashad Lawrence. Both of those guys were good players in college. Evan Weaver, I'm not that huge of a fan of, but they get the B because they failed to address their secondary a little bit. They did not grab an edge rusher, and also they could have used an interior lineman. So, normally teams missing on a bunch of needs would get it lower than a B, but the fact that they stole Isaiah Simmons when he fell to them, and they stole Josh Jones in the third round after many thought he'd go in round one, is what bumps their grade up to a B. All right. Next up is the Atlanta Falcons. I think that the Falcons had a little bit of a better draft than people give them credit for, but I'm going to give them a B as well. A lot of people killed them because they took A.J. Terrell over CeeDee Lamb. I was one of those people as well. But in the second and third rounds, I thought they got some players. Marlon Davidson, I think, could play. Matt Hennessy, I like. I think they stole Hennessy, by the way. Davidson, I thought was second-round talent. Michael Walker, they drafted in the fourth round, as well as Jalen Hawkins, the safety out of Cal, and Walker's obviously the linebacker from Fresno State. And then they took a punter, Sterling Horfscheider, in the seventh round. Terrell's probably going to be thrown into a situation to start right away because they're in dire need at the secondary. But my issue with that pick was that there were better corners on the board and CeeDee Lamb was still on the board. And they reached for a need. And obviously, had Terrell not gone there, let's say CeeDee Lamb goes there, the Cowboys probably take Chasen, and then the Raiders probably take Terrell. They probably took Terrell thinking that they knew that the Raiders were going to take him at 19. That's why the Raiders reached for Damon Arnett, and obviously that trade didn't work out to go up and get C.J. Henderson, who they really, really wanted. But Isaiah Simmons fell to the Cardinals, so they just took him. So there's the what if there. So I can't really fault Atlanta for the Cardinals staying pat at 8 and taking Isaiah Simmons. That's just not the Falcons' fault. But like I said, there are better corners on the board. Matt Hennessy, I think, could potentially start for them this year. Marlon Davidson is a good opposite edge rusher of Dante Fowler. So I give them a B because I think they had a better draft than people give them credit for, and I think too many people are overreacting to them passing on CeeDee Lamb for AJ Terrell. Next up is the Baltimore Ravens. I give them an A. I think they had a great draft. In the first round, they took Patrick Queen from LSU, the linebacker, and they didn't even have to trade up to get him. Second round, they took J.K. Dobbins, the running back out of Ohio State. Third round, they had a bunch of picks. They took Justin Madubuike, the defensive tackle from A&M. Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver from Texas. Malik Harrison, the linebacker out of Ohio State. Tyree Phillips, the tackle from Mississippi State. Fourth round, Ben Bredeson, the guard from Michigan. Fifth round, they took Broderick Washington, the defensive tackle from Texas Tech. And the sixth round, they took James Proch, the wideout from SMU. In the seventh, they took Geno Stone, the safety out of Iowa. These are a lot of talented players. I give them an A. I think they did a great job. Queen will start for them. I think J.K. Dobbins will be the number 2 back behind Mark Ingram, and maybe Gus Edwards becomes trade bait. I think Madubuike can start for them potentially. Devin Duvernay is could be a good number 2 or 3 option for the Ravens behind Hollywood Brown, and let's say they keep around the kid Boykin, who they drafted out of Notre Dame last year, and those 3 would be solid wide receivers for him. Malik Harrison, I think, could start for them. He's someone that fell to them in the third round. They actually signed DJ Fluker today. He'll probably replace Marshall Yanda on the line. And they drafted Ben Bredeson, who maybe they'll try him out if Fluker doesn't work out. Tyree Phillips, death piece. So I think they had a great draft. And James Proch, I think, could be a good second-tier wide receiver or second-string, third-string wide receiver for them, too. And a lot of people like Geno Stone out of Iowa. So a great draft by Ernie DaCosta and the Baltimore Ravens. Next up is the Buffalo Bills. I give them a C. They did not have a first-round pick courtesy to the trading for Stephon Diggs. Second round, they took A.J. Epineza, the defensive end from Iowa. I thought that was a steal. Zach Moss, the running back from Utah, was their third-round pick. I thought that was a good pick. Gabriel Davis, the wideout from UCF. I like him. I think that was a good pick. Fifth round, they took Jake Fromm, the quarterback out of Georgia, who unexpectedly fell to the fifth round. He should have been taken on day 2 of the draft in my mind, maybe even the second round. I thought he was the fifth best quarterback in the draft behind Burrow to Herbert and Love. Sixth round, Tyler Bass, the kicker for Georgia Southern. Isaiah Hodgins, a wideout from Oregon State. In the 7th round, they took Dane Jackson, the cornerback from Pitt. I thought that they missed on a couple needs. I thought they needed help on the offensive line. I thought that they could have used someone on the interior of the defensive line along with Ed Oliver. And tight end, they have a couple big-name tight ends on their roster. They drafted one last year who Pro Football Focus wasn't a fan of. Well, he could be somebody that breaks out in the future. And then they have Tyler Kroft, the ex-Cincinnati Bengal. But they just could have used depth there. So that's why they got to say they just missed out on a lot of needs, in my opinion. And they went for the sexy toys to build around Josh Allen, which isn't the worst thing in the world, by the way. Okay, next up is the Carolina Panthers. A lot of people are high on the Panthers draft. I wasn't as high as the experts were. I give them a B minus. I just thought that they missed on a couple needs. First round they took Derek Brown, the defensive tackle from Auburn. That was a tough decision for them. It was between him and Isaiah Simmons. I think they should have gone with Simmons, and then who knows if they go with Simmons. I mentioned this earlier. Do the Cardinals take Derek Brown, an offensive lineman, or do they trade down and Atlanta comes up for the corner? Maybe Arizona takes C.J. Henderson for what it's worth. Second round, they had two picks. Their first pick of the second round, they took Yader Gross-Matos of Penn State, the defensive end. And then the second of the two picks, they go with Jeremy Chin, the safety out of Southern Illinois. Fourth round, they go with Troy Pride, the corner from Notre Dame. Fifth round, they go with Kenny Robinson, the safety out of West Virginia. Sixth round, they go with Bravion Roy, the defensive tackle out of Baylor. And seventh round, they go with Stanley Thomas Oliver III, the cornerback out of Florida International. They made some history being the first team ever to go all at one position in the draft. That's why I give them a B minus, because they failed to address some needs on the offensive side of the ball, such as tight end to replace Greg Olsen. They could have used an extra wide receiver, but I think they like their wide receivers. They had a need on the interior offensive line after the trading of Trey Turner, and they failed to address the linebacker position. So that's why they get a B minus, and it wouldn't have been lower had they not had Yader Gross-Matos fall to them. So they kind of lucked out with that. Okay, next up is the Chicago Bears. There are a lot of people that were critical on the Bears draft. I was not one of those people. I give them a B plus. I think that they addressed some of the right needs, although there were some things that I think that they should have fixed. Second round, they went with Cole Kmet, the tight end out of Notre Dame, and Jalen Johnson, the cornerback out of Utah, at picks 43 and 50, respectively. Fourth round, Trevis Gibson, the linebacker out of Tulsa. Fifth round, Kendall Vittler, the corner out of Georgia Southern, as well as Darnell Mooney, the wideout from Tulane. Seventh round, they took Arlington Hambright, the guard out of Colorado, and Lachavious Simmons, the guard out of Tennessee State. Kmet's going to start for them. They could have taken Kmet at 50, but maybe they were fearing somebody was going to take him, like Indy or whomever. Browns, maybe. Somebody weird. Maybe they're fearing that. I thought Jalen Johnson was a good pick. I think that they should have went wide receiver in the fourth round instead of taking Mooney out of Tulane. Kendall Viler is somebody that had some success in the Sun Belt. Travis Gibson is somebody is high on, or people are high on as well. The thing with the Bears, they could have had some depth on the edge rush position, and I thought that they reached for the tight end. So that's why they get a B plus rather than an A. They just addressed some needs, and one need, a depth need that I think that they could have addressed was edge rush, but they didn't. And I think that, like I said, is going to start for them. I think Jalen Johnson could start. I don't know about Mooney. We'll see. And maybe they could have went offensive line with the other of the two second-round picks instead of Kmet. All right, next up is the Cincinnati Bengals. Everybody is lauding them because of Joe Burrow, and rightfully so. But I give them only a B minus. I felt that they missed on a lot of needs. I'm going to go through their draft real quick. Joe Burrow, obviously, was the first overall pick. In the second round, they take T. Higgins, the wideout, out of Clemson. In the third round, they go Logan Wilson, the linebacker out of Wyoming, who I felt that they reached for. Fourth round, Akeem Davis-Gaither, the linebacker out of App State, who I think is better than Logan Wilson. That's a hot take. Fifth round, they went with Khalid Kareem, the edge rusher out of Notre Dame. Sixth round, they go with Hakeem Ejeni, the tackle out of Kansas. And seventh round, they went with Marcus Bailey, the linebacker out of Purdue. Why the B minus? They failed to address a couple needs: cornerback, interior offensive line, safety, tight end, and this grade could have been lower had they not stolen T. Higgins. And obviously Joe Burrow is just an easy call. And he'll, I think, start week 1 for the Bengals. I think Andy Dalton will be on another team, whether it's New England or maybe they keep him and possibly trade him if somebody gets hurt in the preseason. That happens every year. That happened a couple years ago with the Vikings. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater got injured, tore his ACL, was out for the season, and then obviously the Eagles had Carson Wentz, and then they kept Sam Bradford on their roster, and then they got a first-round pick for Sam Bradford because the Vikings were so desperate and were a win-now team, and so they wound up trading for Sam Bradford, and that really did not work out for Minnesota. So they're probably waiting for that situation. So I know they probably won't get a first-round pick for Andy Dalton. They'll probably get maybe a fourth-round pick for a team that quarterback gets injured. Like maybe Phillip Rivers gets injured for the Colts. And then the Colts, maybe they'll go with Brissett in that case, so that's a bad example. Let's see. Who has a poor backup situation in the league? Let's say Teddy Bridgewater gets injured for the Panthers. That's ironic because Teddy Bridgewater got injured a couple years ago for the Vikings, and I just used that example. Let's say he gets injured, and Carolina, everybody's talking about them obviously as a tank for Trevor candidate. I don't think that they're the front runners for it, but I think they're a dark horse candidate, and they're a team that obviously wants to try to be competitive because they extended Christian McCaffrey, they signed Bridgewater. So that's a team that is not looking to tank in Matt Rule's first season. So if Bridgewater were to get injured, maybe they give up a fourth-round pick for Andy Dalton. So maybe Cincinnati is just waiting for that scenario. T. Higgins, I think, is going to start. I think Davis Gauthier could start. Not sure about Logan Wilson. I think Cade Kareem could potentially come in occasional snaps, giving guys a breather, so he's a good depth piece to have. All right. Next up is the Cleveland Browns, who I think had a very good draft. I give them a grade of an A-. Jedrick Wills fell to them at the 10th pick. Second round, they go with Grant Delpit, the safety at LSU, which I felt was a steal. Third round, they had 2 picks. Jordan Elliott out of Missouri, the defensive lineman, was one of them, and Jacob Phillips, the inside linebacker from LSU, was the other. Fourth round, they go with Harrison Bryant, the tight end from FAU. Fifth round, they go with Nick Harris, the center from Washington. In sixth round, they go with Donovan Peoples-Jones, the wide receiver from Michigan. The one need that the Browns missed on in this draft that cost them probably an A or an A+ was corner. I felt that they needed an extra corner to give them some more depth behind Denzel Ward, but they did not do that. I think Wills will start opposite Jack Conklin on the left side. I think Delpit can start for them. Jordan Elliott potentially. Harrison Bryant I don't think will, unless if Njoku or Austin Hooper gets injured. Nick Harris, the center from Washington, not sure about. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, could be their fourth receiver or even third receiver. I like him a lot. So I felt that the Cleveland Browns obviously had a very good weekend. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is the team that had the very best draft. I give them an A+. They did an awesome job. CeeDee Lamb fell to them at 17. Trayvon Diggs fell to them at 51 in the second round. He should have been a first-round pick. Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle from Oklahoma, was their third-round pick. I felt he was a possible back-end second-round talent that they got there, so that was pretty good. Fourth round, they went with Reggie Robinson Jr. from Tulsa, the corner, so they get more depth there. Fifth round, they got 2 steals, and Tyler Biadasz, the center from Wisconsin, and Bradley Anae, the edge rusher from Utah, and then a possible backup quarterback for Dak Prescott with Ben DiNucci out of James Madison. A bunch of steals. I think 4 steals in this draft. Lamb will start for them. He will replace Randall Cobb, and that is a mega upgrade over Randall Cobb. But the theme of the Cowboys draft, in my opinion, was replacing the departed free agents and retires. Diggs replaces Byron Jones. You have Gallimore, who can come in and be a depth piece on the defensive line on the interior with Gerald McCoy there. Bradley Anae can replace Robert Quinn, and Tyler Biadasz replaces the retired the offensive lineman, the center, Travis Frederick. So the Cowboys really absolutely nailed this draft. In terms of a missed need, they could have gone with another linebacker, but that's okay. An extra linebacker would have been for depth reasons. Sean Lee aging. They already have a young star linebacker in Jalen Smith, and then they have another solid linebacker in Leighton Vander Esch as well. So an extra linebacker would have been nice in terms of depth, but I think they're set, and they're obviously a Super Bowl contender in my mind. Next up, the Denver Broncos. I thought they had a really good draft. I have to give them a grade of a B+. First round, they stole Jerry Jeudy, the wideout from Bama. Second round, they doubled down on building around Drew Lock and take another wideout in KJ Hamler from Penn State. Third round, they go with Michael Ojumida, the corner from Iowa. Lloyd Cushenberry, the center from LSU. McTelvin Ajim, the defensive tackle from Arkansas. Fourth round, they go with Albert Okunbaum, the tight end out of Missouri. Fifth round, Justin Strand, the linebacker from Wake Forest. Sixth round, Netane Muti, the guard from Fresno State. I thought he could have been a late third or an early fourth round pick, so that's good value for Denver. And in the seventh round, they go with Tyree Cleveland, the wideout from Florida, and Derek Zuka, the linebacker from North Dakota State. In terms of missed needs for Denver, I thought they could have used more depth on the edge rush, particularly the outside linebacker spot, although they have 2 talented ones, obviously, in Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, but Chubb has missed time due to injury. Miller's getting a little older, but he's still somebody in his prime. But it would have been nice if they grabbed another outside linebacker for depth purposes and another offensive lineman at the tackle position. I thought that they could have used another tackle opposite of Garrett Bowles, but I think they did an outstanding job. Like I said, I give them a B+. I think Lloyd Cushenberry could potentially start for them at center. Michael Ojuma, I think, could possibly start at corner with A.J. Boye. And then Julian Hamler will start with Cortland Sutton at wide receiver. Albert Okunbaum, the tight end from Missouri, I think that's a little bit of a depth piece because they already have a young tight end that they drafted last year, Noah Fant, who they like. And I think Netane Muti could potentially start for them as well. So I think Denver did a really nice job here with their draft. Next up is the Detroit Lions. A lot of people are going to think I'm giving them a good grade. Not so much. I'm giving them a C+. I personally felt that they went for some sexy toys over needs in day 2 of the draft. Third overall, they go with Jeff Okudah, the corner out of Ohio State, which everybody pretty much expected. Second round, they surprisingly go with DeAndre Swift from Georgia. That's what I was talking about with the sexy toy. I thought they should have gone with Yader Gross-Matos or A.J. Epineza or Ross Blacklock out of TCU. Third round, they addressed the edge rush with Julian Okwara from Notre Dame. And also in the third round, they get Jonah Jackson out of Ohio State, the guard. Fourth round, they go with Logan Stenberg, a guard out of Kentucky. Fifth round, they go with Quintez Cephas, the wideout from Wisconsin, and Jason Huntley, the running back out of New Mexico State. Sixth round, they go with John Panizzi, the defensive tackle out of Utah. And seventh round, they go with Jashon Cornell, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State. In terms of needs that they missed, they could have used a linebacker, and they could have used more tight end insurance behind the kid that they drafted last year. I just felt they reached for a lot of guys, and they didn't need a running back. I mean, DeAndre Swift's a great player, and he's probably going to be their number one back, as Kerryon Johnson would be their number two back. But I felt that they should have prioritized their other needs more than going with the sexy toy. So that's why I give them a not so great C+. The next grade is a bad one, and that is, of course, the Green Bay Packers, who get a D+. Obviously, they take Jordan Love with the first pick, or their first pick, number 26 overall, the quarterback out of Utah State. Second round, they go with A.J. Dillon, the running back out of Boston College. You notice another theme here. They have a running back. His name is Aaron Jones. But everyone will say, oh, well, Aaron Jones is in the last year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent. So that pick I really didn't mind. And then the third round, they went with Josiah DeGuara, the tight end out of Cincinnati. They lost Jimmy Graham. So they go with the tight end there. Fifth round, they go with Kamal Martin, the linebacker out of Minnesota. Sixth round, they had a couple picks. John Royan Jr., the guard out of Michigan. Jake Hansen, the center out of Oregon. And Simone Stepniak, the guard out of Indiana. Seventh round, they go with Vernon Scott, the safety out of TCU. And Jonathan Garvin, the defensive end out of Miami. Green Bay failed to address their need of wide receiver. And that is a disaster in my mind, that they failed to address that. They could have gone Denzel Mims. They could have gone with KJ Hamler. They could have gone with a bunch of these guys in the first round, and Aaron Rodgers be doing lap dances. Or, you know what else they could have done in the first round? They could have taken somebody like Patrick Queen or Jordan Brooks or Zach Bond. But no, they trade up and get Jordan Love. And a lot of people thought they were trading up for Patrick Queen or a wide receiver. But no, they take the fourth best quarterback in this draft, who a lot of people don't think is going to succeed in the league. But you never know. And that tells you a lot of what they think about Aaron Rodgers. This team is obviously not as good as last year. I am very down on the Green Bay Packers. And oh yeah, they also had a need in the defensive backfield, so they could have addressed cornerback as well. But in terms of guys that I think will start for them, I think A.J. Dillon will see a lot of playing time, and maybe Kamal Martin for depth, and then I think Josiah DeGuara will see some meaningful snaps this year as well. Next up, the Houston Texans. They get a grade of a C. I think that they missed a lot of needs, which I'll get to. Second round, they go with Ross Blacklock, the defensive tackle from TCU, with the pick they got back in the DeAndre Hopkins deal. Third round, they go with Jonathan Greenland, the outside linebacker from Florida. Fourth round, they go with Charlie Heck, the offensive tackle from North Carolina, and John Reed, the corner from Penn State. And then the fifth round, they go with Isaiah Kutler, the wide receiver from Rhode Island. And you know how I feel about FCS and non-Division I players, but that was in the fifth round, and a lot of people were high on Rhode Island's talent coming in to the draft. They failed to address a need at tight end and the interior offensive line, edge rush opposite of J.J. Watt, and to replace Jadeveon Clowney, and they failed to address a need at safety. They could have gone with Grant Delpit at that pick. But I understand that they had a need on the interior of their defense because they lost a free agent there. So I understand that, but they could have addressed that need. So the Texans get a C, and part of it is punishment still due to the disastrous trade of DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals. I think Blacklock can start out of these 5 players that they drafted, and maybe Greenland can see some, or Greenard can see some playing time potentially as well. The Indianapolis Colts. A lot of people love what they did. I like what they did. I give them a solid B. They didn't have a first-round pick. In the second round, they took Michael Pittman Jr., the wideout from USC, and Jonathan Taylor, the running back out of Wisconsin. Third round, they go with Julian Blackmon, the safety out of Utah. Fourth round, they take Jacob Eason out of Washington. It's amazing that Eason fell to the 4th round, too. I thought he'd be a day 3 pick, and I would have been much higher on that pick if it was Jake Fromm, because I'm higher on Jake Fromm than Jacob Eason. And I think Fromm is better than Eason. 5th round, they go with Danny Pinter, the guard out of Ball State. 6th round, they had a lot of picks. Robert Windsor, the defensive tackle from Penn State. Isaiah Rodgers, the cornerback out of UMass. Desmond Patton, the wideout from Washington State. And Jordan Glasgow, the linebacker out of Michigan. In terms of guys that I think can start, Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. I think Taylor and Marlon Mack will see shares of snaps. Pittman will play a lot. I think Blackmon might start. And Malik Hooker's on the trade block, so maybe Blackmon becomes their number 1 guy if they trade Malik Hooker, who they've been disappointed in. Jacob Eason could very well be their quarterback of the future. And in terms of needs that they missed on, they could have used a tight end to replace Eric Ebron, but that's okay because I felt that the rest of the draft they did a solid job, so I give them a solid B. Next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I like what they did a lot. I give them a very nice grade of a B+. First round, they went C.J. Henderson, the corner out of Florida, and K'Lavon Chase on the edge rusher out of LSU. Second round, Laviska Shenault, the wideout from Colorado. Third round, Devon Hamilton, the defensive tackle from Ohio State. Fourth round, Ben Bartch, the tackle out of St. John's, Minnesota. Josiah Scott, the corner out of Michigan State. Shaquille Quaterman, the inside linebacker out of Miami. Fifth round, Daniel Thomas, the safety out of Auburn. Colin Johnson, the wideout from Texas. Sixth round, Jake Luton, the quarterback out of Oregon State. Tyler Davis, the tight end from Georgia Tech. In seventh round, Chris Claybrooks, the cornerback out of Memphis. In terms of needs that they missed on, they could have gotten another interior lineman, and they could have gotten another running back to potentially replace Leonard Fournette down the road, who I think will possibly be traded or released within the next year or so. In terms of guys I think can start, I think Henderson will start. I think Chason will start opposite of Josh Allen. Shenault, I think, will start because they did get rid of Marquise Lee. Daniel Thomas, maybe. Colin Johnson, maybe. Could Luton back up? Gardner Minshew, maybe. So I think the Jacksonville Jaguars did a really nice job here. Next up is the Kansas City Chiefs. I give them a B-. Not the worst grade in the world. The first round, they went with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back out of LSU. I know there's a lot of debate that they should have gone defense with this pick. Zach Bond was still on the board. Well, he was on the board for a long time. Offensive line even. Maybe edge rush with Gator Gross-Matos, or secondary with Xavier McKinney or somebody like that. But no, they go with the sexy toy and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I gave a higher grade for them because I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be a great fit with the Chiefs. Second round, Willie Gay, the linebacker out of Mississippi State. Third round, Lucas Niang, the tackle out of TCU. Fourth round, L'Jarius Sneed, the safety out of La Tech. Fifth round, Mike Dana, the defensive end out of Michigan. And seventh round, Thakarius Keys, the cornerback out of Tulane. In terms of missed needs, I think they could have used another wide receiver option for Patrick Mahomes. And they could have used another interior offensive lineman. So those missed needs, I think, brought the grade down a little bit for Kansas City. But I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because they just won the Super Bowl. And there's a couple guys I thought they stole, such as Lucas Niang, the tackle out of TCU. I think that he could be a depth piece for them. Willie Gay I like a lot. Maybe he starts for them. Clyde Edwards-Helaire I think will share some snap times with Damian Williams in that offense. That'll be a popular Rookie of the Year pick in my mind. Next up is the Las Vegas Raiders. I actually said Las Vegas instead of Oakland for once regarding the Raiders because I screwed up so many times on the draft preview podcasts and the draft recap round 1 podcast from Friday and said Oakland instead of Las Vegas, but I said Las Vegas this time, so that's good. All right, I gave the Las Vegas Raiders a C-, and that's because they reached on a lot of players and passed on some guys and failed to address needs. Instead, they go for sexy toys. First round, they take Henry Ruggs, the wideout from Alabama, and Damon Arnett, the corner out of Ohio State. Third round, Lynn Bowden, the wideout from Kentucky, and Brian Edwards, the wideout from South Carolina, and Tanner Muse, the linebacker from Clemson. Fourth round, they take John Simpson, the guard out of Clemson, and Amik Robertson, the cornerback out of Virginia Tech. In terms of missed needs for the Raiders, they could have used an outside linebacker and another edge rusher. They missed a safety. They needed interior defensive line, offensive tackle. They could have used opposite Trent Brown and split some time with Colton Miller. And a tight end, an extra tight end piece to go with their depth of their tight ends. But they like their tight ends, so that one I understand. So they get a C- basically because they ignored a lot of needs on the defensive side of the ball, and instead they went for shiny toys such as Lynn Bowden and Brian Edwards in the third round, and then they reached for Damon Arnett, although they stole Amik Robertson, who I think can start on the Raiders. And I think Arnett can too, but I just felt that he was a reach at where they took him. Henry Ruggs will start for the Raiders. John Simpson, I think, can potentially down the road. I like John Simpson a lot. Tanner Muse maybe get some playing time. I think Brian Edwards can as well for the Las Vegas Raiders. Next up is the Los Angeles Chargers. I give their draft a C+. Obviously, they took Justin Herbert out of Oregon to be their possible next franchise quarterback. I'm not a big Herbert fan. I felt that Herbert had to go to the right situation, and I feel that way about the Chargers with the talent they have on their roster, and especially on the skilled position. And also in the first round, they took Kenneth Murray, the linebacker out of Oklahoma. Fourth round, they took Joshua Kelly, the running back out of UCLA. He'll probably be their second or third string running back behind, obviously, Austin Eckler. And then Justin Jackson out of Northwestern that they took a few years ago. Fifth round, they go with Joe Reed, the wideout from Virginia. Sixth round, they go with Alohi Gilman, the safety out of Notre Dame. And in the seventh round, they go with KJ Hill, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. In terms of missed needs for the Chargers, I thought they had to address their offensive line, especially on the tackles sides, because they got rid of Russell Okung, although they upgraded interior to go with Trey Turner, but they didn't really quote-unquote replace Russell Okung. They could have used another edge rusher to go with Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram from a depth standpoint. But they really didn't have to go that route. The interior, they could have used some help other than Jerry Tillery. They could have used more depth on the interior offensive line and then a tight end to back up Hunter Henry for a year in case they lose him in free agency down the road. In terms of who could start, I think Herbert could very well be the Chargers' Week 1 starter. I'm not ruling that out. I think Kenneth Murray will start for them. I think Joshua Kelly will see some time. I think Joe Reed could be a second or third stringer. And KJ Hill I really like. I feel like they stole him. And I think he could be a second stringer as well. But the ignoring the offensive line, I think, is really what doomed the Chargers' grade here. And that's why they have a C+ for the draft. And now the other team in Los Angeles, the Rams, I give them a C. They went for sexy toys over needs, especially with their first 2 picks of Cam Akers, the running back out of Florida State, and Van Jefferson, the wideout from Florida. I understand the Cam Akers pick because they lost Todd Gurley, so like that one I'm fine with. But Van Jefferson, I like, but they could have gone for a need pick there. Third round, they went with Terrell Lewis, the linebacker out of Alabama, and Terrell Burgess, the safety out of Utah. Fourth round, Bryson Hopkins, the tight end out of Purdue. Sixth round, Jordan Fuller, the safety out of Ohio State. Seventh round, Clay Johnson, the linebacker out of Baylor. Sam Sloman, the kicker out of Miami of Ohio, to replace Greg Zuerlein, who went to the Cowboys. And Tremaine Archam, the guard out of Clemson. I only defend teams for drafting kickers if they lost or cut their kicker that was actually decent for a while. Like the Patriots with Gostkowski, they should have waited to the 7th round to get a kicker, and that's the perfect time to get a kicker with one of those 7th round picks. That's the time you get a kicker. So I think the Rams did a nice job here by snagging their kicker in the 7th round. But by going with sexy toys over needs is why their grade's a C. And they failed to address a bunch of needs, such as the inside linebacker position. They could have used another tackle on the offensive line, and then they could have used another guy on the interior of their defense to go with Aaron Donald on that side of the ball. So that's why the Rams get such a low grade. I think Akers will start for them this year. I think he's a candidate for the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Terrell Lewis, I think, could start for them. Terrell Burgess, I think, could start for them. Bryson Hopkins will be third on their depth chart behind Tyler Higbee and the other guy that they have. I'm blanking on his name. Gerald Everett. That's it. Jordan Fuller, I like. Maybe he'll start. And Tremaine Ankrum may be a depth piece for them. Next up, I have the Miami Dolphins. Their grade is an A-. They had a lot of picks in this draft. First round, they had 3. They went with Tua, obviously, with their 5th pick. 18, they go with Austin Jackson out of USC, the tackle. First rounder, they go with Noah Ibignoe, the corner out of Auburn. Second round, they go with Robert Hunt, the tackle out of Louisiana, and Raekwon Davis, the defensive tackle from Alabama. Third round, Brandon Jones, the safety out of Texas. Fourth round, Solomon Kindley, the guard out of Georgia. Fifth round, Jason Strowbridge, the edge rusher out of North Carolina, and Curtis Weaver, the edge rusher out of Boise State. Sixth round, Blake Ferguson, the long snapper out of LSU. And 7th round, they go with Malcolm Perry, the all-around do-it-all guy from the Naval Academy. In terms of who I think could start for them, Tua, I think there's a chance he's a Week 1 starter, but it's more likely to be Ryan Fitzpatrick because I think they might take their time with Tua because of the injury. Austin Jackson will start for them. I think Robert Hunt may start for them. Noah Ibignoe maybe will see some time and play opposite of Byron Jones. Solomon Kindley, I think, is a nice depth piece. Curtis Weaver, I think, will start for them. Jason Strowbridge will be a depth piece. Malcolm Perry, I think, will be like a wild card option in their offense. In terms of missed needs for the Dolphins, they failed to address the running back position in the draft. But I give them a pass because they went out and acquired Matt Breida, so they have him and Jordan Howard as options. They have failed to address safety. I was hoping they'd go with McKinney out of Alabama for them out of the with their third first rounder, but they went with Imignoe instead from Auburn to address a need at corner. Inside linebacker, they could have used help at Tua, could have had a possible extra weapon at tight end and wide receiver. But all those steals they got is why their grade is an A-. Okay, next up is the Minnesota Vikings. I thought they had an outstanding draft. I give them an A. They filled all the needs that I felt that were important for them. In the first round, they go with Justin Jefferson out of LSU and Jeff Gladney out of TCU to replace Stephon Diggs and then some of those departed corners from Minnesota, respectively. Second round, they go with Ezra Cleveland, the tackle out of Boise State. Third round, they go with Cameron Dantzler, the corner out of Mississippi State, who I like. Fourth round, they go with DJ Wonnum, the edge rusher out of South Carolina. James Lynch, the interior defensive lineman from Baylor. And Troy Dye, the linebacker out of Oregon. Fifth round, Harrison Hand, the corner out of Temple. And KJ Osborne, the wideout from Miami. Sixth round, Blake Brandel, the tackle out of Oregon State. And Josh Metellus, the safety out of Michigan. Seventh round, Kenny Wilkes, the defensive end out of Michigan State. Nate Stanley, the quarterback out of Iowa. Maybe that's a backup to Kirk Cousins. Brian Cole, the safety out of Mississippi State. And Kyle Hinton, the guard out of Washburn. Jefferson will start for them, be their number 2 guy behind Adam Thielen. Jeff Gladney will start for them. Cam Dantzler will start for them. They will replace the departed Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes, respectively. Or maybe Mike Hughes starts as well. And one of those guys are depth pieces. Ezra Cleveland, I think, has a chance to start for them. James Lynch maybe could come in and replace Linval Joseph. DJ Wonnum maybe can come in and replace Everson Griffin. So the Minnesota Vikings, I think, really had a great draft. And in terms of missed needs, interior offensive line would have been fine, but I think they're high on the kid that they drafted last year, James Bradbury, who came out of Boston College. Okay, next up is the New England Patriots. I give them a C. I was not in love with their draft whatsoever. Second round, they go with a Division II kid with Kyle Duggar from Lenoir Rhine. And they also go with Josh Uche, the outside linebacker from Michigan. Third round, Fernie Jennings, the outside linebacker out of Alabama. Devin Asai, the tight end from UCLA. And Dalton Keene, the tight end out of Virginia Tech. Fifth round, they go with the kicker and Justin Rosswar from Marshall. They could have waited until the 7th round for a kicker. Sixth round, Michael Onwu, the guard out of Michigan. Justin Herron, the tackle from Wake Forest. Cash Malia, the middle linebacker out of Wyoming. And 7th round, Dustin Woodard, the center out of Memphis. In terms of guys I think can start, one of those tight ends will probably start for them. I like the UCLA tight end a little bit better than the Virginia Tech tight end. I think Fernie Jennings will start for them. I think Uche could start for them. I think Duggar maybe down the road because I think they're fine at safety right now. I think Roshwasser could start for them, obviously replacing the kicker Gostkowski, who they've had for a really long time. In terms of missed needs, obviously a quarterback. Maybe Belichick just didn't like these quarterbacks, and maybe he's planning on tanking for Trevor and Justin Fields next year. And there's another really good quarterback out of North Dakota State who a lot of folks like. I like him too. He's somebody that put up video game numbers, just like Carson Wentz did when he was the quarterback out, or when he was with North Dakota State. Defensive tackle, I thought that they had to address, and they failed to address wide receiver. Marquise Lee, I don't think is the answer, but you never know. Maybe he'll have chemistry with whomever their quarterback is this season. So I give the Patriots a draft grade of a C. Next up is the New Orleans Saints. I give them a very solid B+ grade. I think they did a really good job. In the first round, they obviously took Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan, who a lot of people are high on. In the third round, they had 2 picks. They traded up for Zach Baun, the linebacker out of Wisconsin. And they took Adam Trotman, the tight end out of Dayton. And in the 7th round, they took Tommy Stevens, the quarterback out of Mississippi State. That pick now, looking back, makes no sense because they just reached a deal with Jameis Winston and they extended Taysom Hill. So, he's just a depth chart guy. That was not really that good of a pick. And that pick is why they don't have an A for this draft. In terms of missed needs for the Saints, they could have used an extra middle linebacker. Alex Anzalone, somebody that is coming off an injury. So they could have used depth there. They could have used another wide receiver to go with Michael Thomas and the newly signed Emmanuel Sanders. And they could have gone with an extra interior defensive lineman to go with Sheldon Rankins up the middle. But I thought that they stole Zach Baun. Trotman was a really good pick in the 3rd round. And I like the pick of Ruiz, and he brings a lot of versatility. He'll probably start at guard for them as they drafted a center last year, Eric McCoy. That's why a lot of people were questioning that pick. I looked at that as a possible pick at a different position at guard. He'll start for them at guard. I think Zach Baun will start for them. I think Trotman could be their tight end 1 in the future, but probably this year tight end 2 behind Jared Cook. And then obviously I just gave away my thoughts on Tommy Stevens. The New York Football Giants are next. They get a solid B from me. I think they had a very solid draft. First, they took Andrew Thomas, obviously, the tackle out of Georgia. 2nd round, they go with Xavier McKinney, who fell to them, the safety from Bama. 3rd round, Matt Pert, the tackle out of UConn. 4th round, Darnay Holmes, the corner out of UCLA. 5th round, Shane Lemieux, the guard out of Oregon. I thought that was a steal. He should have been a 4th rounder. 6th round, Cam Brown, the linebacker out of Penn State. And then 7th round, they had 4 picks. Carter Coughlin out of Minnesota, linebacker. TJ Brunson, a linebacker out of South Carolina. Chris Williamson, corner out of Minnesota. And Tate Crowder, linebacker out of Georgia. In terms of who I think can start for them, Andrew Thomas will start at one of the tackle positions opposite of Nate Solder, unless they cut Nate Solder and they start Thomas and maybe they give Matt Pert some action right away, or they go with Cam Fleming for a year, who they signed to a 1-year deal. So now they have depth on the offensive line. McKinney's going to start for them right away with Jabril Peppers at safety. Darnay Holmes, I think, could start for them at corner. Shane Lemieux, I think, will be a starter for the Football Giants down the road, whether that's at center or at guard. Carter Coughlin was somebody that had a good career at Minnesota. I could see him starting for them, and I could see Cam Brown starting for them as well. He had a nice career at Penn State. In terms of missed needs, edge rush. That's what cost them an A grade, in my opinion. And that, combined with the fact that they traded away their 3rd round pick to the Jets in the package for Leonard Williams, who perceives himself as a edge rusher, but he's really a better defensive tackle than a defensive edge rusher, and he's better against the run than against the pass, and that's what makes him an overrated player, in my opinion, in the NFL. And I don't think I even had him in my 2015 redraft. But in terms of missed needs for the Big Blue, they could have used some skill position guys to surround Daniel Jones with, but that's okay. I felt that protecting Daniel Jones was important, and I think some of their skill position guys are a little underrated, so that's why I didn't punish Big Blue for not picking up some skill position guys. They have some depth at running back behind Saquon Barkley with Dion Lewis. They have a couple good wide receivers, Darius Slayton and Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, and then Corey Coleman's coming off the injury. We'll see how he looks. And then they have Evan Ingram at tight end, who was in trade rumors. And then they signed another tight end in the offseason to back him up. So maybe some depth at tight end would have been fine. But yeah, that maybe takes a couple points off for them, as well as failing to address the edge rush. So I give the Football Giants a solid B. The New York Football Jets. get a B- from me. There's a couple picks that I felt could have been better. Mekhi Becton, they took in the first round from Louisville. I punished him a little bit for that because Tristan Wirfs was still on the board, and I think he's better than Becton, and Becton obviously had the failed drug test. Although I do think Becton has a chance to be a Pro Bowl tackle. Second round, they go with Denzel Mims, the wideout from Baylor. I thought that was a steal. Third round, Ashton Davis, the defensive back out of Cal. Jabari Zuniga, the defensive end out of Florida, I like. Fourth round, LaMichael Pirine, the running back from Florida. James Morgan, the quarterback from FIU, possible backup for Sam Darnold. And Cam Clark, the tackle out of Charlotte. Fifth round, steal, Bryce Hall, cornerback out of Virginia. And in the sixth round, they go with Brandon Mann, the punter out of Texas A&M. So they used their last pick on a punter. And you know how I feel about punters and kickers and long snappers in the draft. I've said that 1,000 times. So the stealing of Bryce Hall and Denzel Mims is what prevents them from a lower draft grade. Ashton Davis was a weird pick because they already have two good safeties in Jamal Adams and Marcus May. Maybe they are looking to trade Adams and maybe they like Ashton Davis, so who knows there. So I don't think Davis will start for them. Becton and Mims will. I think Zuniga has a chance to start. LaMichael Pirine could back up Le'Veon Bell. James Morgan maybe makes the roster as the backup to Sam Darnold. And I think Bryce Hall has a chance to start for the Jets as well. In terms of missed needs for the football Jets, they could have used a tight end to help that depth because they have the guy coming back from injury this year. And then their tight end from last year showed some promise. They could have used some linebacking help, and they could have had help on the interior of their offensive line. The Philadelphia Eagles get a C+ from me, and this is based on the fact that they passed on some talent in the first and second round. Jalen Reagor was their first selection, the wideout from TCU. They passed obviously on Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins and a bunch of guys who I like better than Jalen Reagor, such as Denzel Mims. Second round, they go with Jalen Hurts, the quarterback out of Oklahoma. That was probably one of the most surprising picks of the entire draft. I think that they could have used the backup quarterback on day 3 rather than day 2. Although I like Jalen Hurts, but to me, he was more of a third round or fourth round pick for me. Third round, Davion Taylor, the linebacker out of Colorado. Fourth round, Kevon Wallace, the safety out of Clemson. Jack Driscoll, the guard out of Auburn. Fifth round, John Hightower, the wideout from Boise State. Sixth round, Sean Bradley, the inside linebacker from Temple. So they get a Temple kid in Philly. Quez Watkins, the wideout from Southern Miss. Prince Tega Wanago, the tackle out of Auburn. And Casey Toole, the linebacker out of Stanford. In terms of guys that can start, Jalen Reagor will probably start for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts will be the backup to Carson Wentz. Kayvon Laws, I think, has a chance to start. Prince Tega Wanago, I think, could be a starter in the NFL down the road. Sean Bradley, I think, could see some playing time as well. Jack Driscoll, maybe. And I think Davion Taylor could potentially see some playing time as well. In terms of missed needs for Philly, they could have used some edge rush help. They could have used some depth at the cornerback. And they could have used running back depth behind Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. So, C+ because I felt that they had a few reaches. Pittsburgh Steelers up next. I think they had a very good draft. I give them a B+. They obviously did not have a first-round pick because of the trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, which is fine because he really helped them last year, even though they did not make the postseason. Although if the new playoff format was in last year, they're obviously the 7th seed. Second round, they go with Chase Claypool, the wideout from Notre Dame. Third round, Alex Highsmith, the linebacker from Charlotte. Fourth round, Anthony McFarland Jr., the running back from Maryland. And Kevin Dotson, the guard out of Louisiana. Sixth round, Antoine Brooks, the safety out of Maryland. And seventh round, Carlos Davis, the defensive tackle out of Nebraska. I think Claypool can see some playing time. McFarland, I think, could be the number 2 back behind James Conner for this year. I think Brooks can potentially start for them in the secondary. And in terms of missed needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they could have used tight end depth behind Vance McDonald and Eric Ebron. They could have used some help on the interior linebacker position along with Devin Bush. So some depth there would have been fine. But that's okay. They're banking on Devin Bush. I believe in Devin Bush. And some of those needs that they missed on were depth reasonings, not really much quote-unquote needs. So the Pittsburgh Steelers get a B+. The San Francisco 49ers had a very good weekend, in my opinion. But in terms of a draft grade, it's not probably what people would think. I'm giving them a B-. There's a couple guys I felt that they reached on, a couple missed needs. First round, they go with Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle out of South Carolina, and Brandon Ayuk, the wideout out of Arizona State. Fifth round, Colton McKivitz, the tackle out of West Virginia. Sixth round, Charlie Woerner, the tight end out of Georgia. Seventh round, Juan Jennings, the wideout out of Tennessee. Ayuk and Kinlaw are going to start this year. I think McKivitz is a potential depth piece, and I think Charlie Woerner could be the backup to Kittle for the Niners as well. In terms of missed needs for San Francisco, cornerback, I thought that was important to address that because a lot of their guys are going to be free agents after the 2020 season. Outside linebacker, but that's okay because I put that down thinking that there was a chance that they'd trade Dee Ford or Quan Alexander. Interior offensive line, they could have used help, and they could have used help at safety. So a couple of those missed needs is why their grade is a B-. The Seattle Seahawks get a C+. Was not entirely in love with their draft. I like the first round pick of Jordan Brooks, though, the linebacker out of Texas Tech. Second round, Darrell Taylor, defensive end, Tennessee. Third round, Damian Lewis, the guard out of LSU. Fourth round, Colby Parkinson, the tight end out of Stanford. And DJ Dallas, the running back out of Miami. Fifth round, Alton Robinson, the defensive end out of Syracuse. Sixth round, Freddie Swain, the wideout out of Florida. And seventh round, Stephen Sullivan, the receiver from LSU, who's played some tight end for them as well. I think Jordan Brooks can start for them. Maybe not really this year, more likely next year. So he's probably a depth piece for this year. Darrell Taylor will probably start for them because of the lack of defensive ends they have. Damian Lewis maybe could start for them this year because they just lost DJ Fluker. Colby Parkinson, they have enough depth at tight end. Maybe he's a contributor down the road. And they have enough running back depth. So I just feel that they went for some toys in day 3 rather than needs. And that's why their grade is a C+. In terms of missed needs for Seattle, they needed help at the tackle spots. The secondary, I think, needed some reinforcements. And the interior of their defensive line, I felt, needed help too. And that's why their grade is a C+. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers get an A. No doubt about it. Tom Brady has to be thrilled with how his team did in the draft. First round, they go with Tristan Wirfs, the tackle out of Iowa. Second round, Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety out of Minnesota. Third round, Keyshawn Vaughn, the running back out of Vanderbilt. Fifth round, Tyler Johnson, wideout Minnesota. Sixth round, Khalil Davis, the defensive lineman out of Nebraska. Seventh round, Chappelle Russell, the linebacker out of Temple. And Raymond Calais, the running back out of Louisiana Lafayette. I think Wirfs will start for them. I think Winfield can start. Keyshawn Vaughn, maybe the backup to Ronald Jones. I think Tyler Johnson can be their number 3 wide receiver, or maybe number 4. So I really think they did an outstanding job with this draft. In terms of missed needs, they could have used some more depth on the interior offensive line, but that's okay. They got enough steals to overcome the ignorance of that need. So the Bucs get an A from me. The Tennessee Titans, I don't think, had a good draft. I give them a C-. First round, they go with Isaiah Wilson, the tackle out of Georgia. I thought he was a second rounder. But they got a steal in the second round with Kristen Fulton out of LSU. Third round, they go with Darrington Evans, the running back out of App State. Fifth round, Laurel Mutchison, the defensive tackle out of NC State. Seventh round, they take a flyer on Cole McDonald, the quarterback out of Hawaii. Maybe he'll back up Brian Tannehill. And the seventh round pick, the other one, Chris Jackson, the defensive back out of Marshall. In terms of missed needs for Tennessee, they failed to address the safety position. I thought that they could have gone with Xavier McKinney, but I understand the importance of protecting the quarterback and replacing Jack Conklin. Inside linebacker, they had a need. They had to replace Delaney Walker. They had another need on the outside linebacker, and they needed help on the interior of their offensive line. So many missed needs is why their grade is so low. Their grade would have been a lot lower had not been for the robbering of Kristen Fulton in the second round, who I think could start for them. I think Isaiah Wilson will probably start for them. Darrington Evans could back up Derrick Henry for this year, maybe start down the road if they move on from Derrick Henry. And then the other guys I don't think are really starters. And then last but not least, the Washington Redskins. I give them a B-. Obviously, they had no choice but to take Chase Young. He was the best player in the draft. Third round, they go with Antonio Gibson, the running back out of Memphis. Fourth round, Sadiq Charles, the tackle out of LSU. Antonio Gandy Golden, the wideout out of Liberty. Fifth round, Keith Ismail, the center out of San Diego State. Khaleke Hudson, the linebacker from Michigan. Seventh round, Carmen Crowell, the safety out of Arkansas. And James Smith-Williams, the defensive end out of NC State. In terms of missed needs, they needed a cornerback to replace Josh Norman. They needed some help on the edge rush a little bit, more so on the linebacker side, more so than the defensive end side. And they could have used some depth behind Jonathan Allen and Darren Payne with the tackles. And they could have used a tight end to replace Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis, who are no longer on the Redskins or really in the league. So the missing of needs is why the Redskins' grade is so low. And Chase Young probably saved it from being a C. Chase Young will start right away. I think Gibson could be a player on special teams for them. Antonio Gandy Golden, I think, could be a piece for Dwayne Haskins, maybe the number 2 receiver behind McLaurin. Sadiq Charles maybe could replace Trent Williams, potentially on that line. Keith Ismail, not so sure. Maybe he'll be a depth piece. Khaleke Hudson's played a big games in Michigan. I think he could have an impact. So that's it for analyzing every team's draft. And now I'm going to do best picks by every team. Like I said, not necessarily best rookies. This is best picks in terms of value. Cardinals, Isaiah Simmons at number 8 overall. No doubt about it. A lot of teams, notably the Panthers, passed on Isaiah Simmons. Cardinals bit the bullet and took him. Atlanta, Matt Hennessy. Baltimore, Patrick Queen. Buffalo, A.J. Epineza. Carolina, Yader Gross-Matos. Chicago, Jalen Johnson. So Cincinnati and Washington, I have obviously Burrow and Young, but I'm going to go with my honorable mentions, the non-Burrow Young division. So my non-Burrow pick for the Bengals, T. Higgins. Browns, Jedrick Wills. Dallas, CeeDee Lamb. Denver, Jerry Jeudy. Detroit, Jeff Okudah. Green Bay, Kamal Martin. Houston, Ross Blacklock. Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor. Jacksonville, K'Lavon Chaisson. KC, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I just feel like that because of the fit more so than the value. Vegas, Amik Robertson. Chargers, KJ Hill. Rams, Terrell Lewis. Miami, Curtis Weaver. Minnesota, Ezra Cleveland. New England, Fernie Jennings. New Orleans, Zach Bond. Giants, Xavier McKinney. Jets, Bryce Hall. Philadelphia, Prince Tega Wanogho. Pittsburgh, Anthony McFarland. San Francisco, Javon Kinlaw. Seattle, Jordan Brooks. Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs. Tennessee, Kristen Fulton. And Washington, the non-Chase Young division, Antonio Gandy Golden. All right, so that's it for the NFL Draft Recap podcast. I'm probably going to look back at this in September and maybe obviously at this time next year as well. And looking back on this as well, because I love looking back on old podcasts like this. So I hope you guys have a great day, everyone.